Hey everybody, welcome to the call today. My name is Aaron Conant. I'm co-founder and managing director of BWG Connect. We're a networking and knowledge sharing group of thousands of brands. We network and knowledge share together to stay on top of the newest trends, the newest strategies, the biggest pain points, things that are shaping the digital landscape as a whole. We talk 30 to 40 brands a week, help them out with digital strategy. We're asking all of them, hey, what are the biggest pain points that you're trying to deal with? What are the newest things around the corner that you're trying to solve for? When the same topic comes up over and over again, we host an event like this. And so a couple of housekeeping items we get started here. Have questions along the way, drop them into the questions tab. We'll get as many of those answered as possible. If you can't have access to the questions tab, feel free at any time to just email me, Aaron, AARON, at bwgconnect.com. Also, if you have questions, after the call, you forgot to ask them, they came up, you thought of them today, tomorrow, next week, never hesitate to shoot me an email, Aaron at bwgconnect.com. More than happy to get you a response. Also, if anybody's looking for any kind of just a quick digital strategy session as a whole, we don't sell anything here at BWG Connect. So it's not it won't be a sales pitch, and it's not, it's just a straight up strategy call, not like a consulting gig or anything like that. But like I said, we talk with 30 or 40 brands a week, start up to Fortune 100, and have a great pulse on what's taking place. And we do a ton in the space of service provider selection. So if you're looking for anybody from Amazon to fulfillment, direct to consumer, performance marketing, obviously, in the Google space with Core Web Vitals, which we're going to talk about today, don't ever hesitate to reach out. I'm more than happy to get you a short list of top service providers. Also, if you're looking to hire anybody, we have a talent division as well, kind of tap into our network of 100,000 plus people. So don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like for any help there. The last thing is, as we kick off here, we're going to be wrapping up. We're starting, a few minutes after the hour. We're going to wrap up with a few minutes to go as well. So if you're looking at your watch, just know we're going to give you plenty of time to get onto your next meeting and not run over on this one at all. So with that being said, I'm going to kind of kick it off. I think, as we're talking to all these brands on a weekly basis, have had a huge interest in what's happening with Google from a direct consumer standpoint. A lot of people are concerned, hey, what's going to happen this May? There's a lot of, I think, information flying out and around there. I've had a lot of questions on it. And so we just brought in some great friends, great partners of the network, and they're all around experts in this area. And so the team over at MoveWeb, we have Ajay Kapoor with us today. I'll kind of kick it over to you if you want to do a quick intro on yourself and on MoveWeb. That would be awesome. And I also want to remind people as we go through it, some of the highlights, and at any point in time, if you have questions, don't hesitate to drop them into the questions tab or just email them to me, Aaron, AARON at bwgconnect.com. But I'll kind of kick it over to you if you and I can advance the slides. If you want to do a brief intro on yourself and MoveWeb, that would be awesome. And yeah, we can kind of kick this off. Thanks, my friend.
Yeah, thanks so much, Aaron. Hi, everybody. It's Ajay Kapoor. I'm the co-founder and CEO of MoveWeb. I am really excited to talk to you guys today and have a really interesting topic on me. I founded MoveWeb 10 years ago, and prior to that, worked on Wall Street, worked as a software developer separate from that, writing apps for smartphones before it was probably wise to do so, years before the iPhone was launched. And founded MoveWeb and launched a product called the XDN, which is infrastructure for sub-second websites. It's a product that sits at that CDN layer, content delivery network layer, that makes your site load in less than a second on a mobile phone, on a desktop device. And we'll show you some case studies later. But what I wanted to talk about is the idea that Google has made a pretty big announcement. They don't change their search algorithm all that often. And when they do, they don't often share how they're going to change it in any amount of detail. That's different than what's happening now. So a year ago, well, not a year ago, last May, 2020 May, they announced something called the Core Web Vitals. You can go to the next slide. The Core Web Vitals is a set of metrics that are about the speed of your website And they said in May, Google said, we're going to rank your site based on these metrics. It's going to be one of the important things, in addition, obviously, to content and relevance. Site speed is going to become an explicit factor, but they didn't mention when they were going to make it part of the algorithm. Then in November, this blog post you can see here, they were very specific. They said in May 2021, so they give effectively the market a 1-year kind of advance warning. They said they're going to start ranking sites. So what's going to happen in May 2021? They're going to change their algorithm, update their algorithm to make site speed, according to these 3 metrics called the Core Web Vitals, have a important impact on how your site ranks. That's number one. The second thing they're going to do is that if you pass these Core Web Vitals, you're going to get like a little badge of honor. And they haven't said whether it's going to be a lightning bolt like you do if you have an AMP page. They haven't said if it's some other sort of badge, but it's going to be not only something that allows your site to rank higher, but something that increases your click-through rates on search results, because there's going to be a little indicator that says, hey, this is a better than average site. So what I wanted to talk to you guys about today is, what are the Core Web Vitals? How is the e-commerce market in general doing on the Core Web Vitals? What are some of the leaders doing to get great scores and passing scores on the Core Web Vitals? And then anything else you guys might have questions for. So would love to be able to field questions later today. I think, Aaron, that's part of this, right? There will be time for something like that.
Yeah, absolutely, and we can answer it real time if people have them. Feel free to drop into the question section. We'll tackle them there. And I've already got a couple that have come in over email specifically around, what happens if if we don't? How do we compare to other? And then, is this a situation where only 1 out of every 1,000 are going to deal with it, and therefore we don't necessarily have to, or is this something that's going to be meaningful and 999 out of 1,000 are going to deal with it, and it's now table stakes? But we can get to all that as well. So as other people, if you have questions, drop them to the Q&A section and the questions, and we'll get them answered for sure.
Great. Hey, those are great questions. Really appreciate the questions. It's hard in a situation like this. There's no video. I can't see you guys, but the questions are what makes this interactive. So I'll answer those questions, Aaron. If you do me a favor and repeat them later, along with any other questions that come up,
Yep.
We'll do that. So and I think I'll be answering some of these questions as we go through this. So look, the big news is May 2021 is when the algorithm changes, and now let's get into, first off, what they're measuring. So if you go to the next slide. So the Core Web Vitals are 3 metrics of site speed. And this is really unique for Google to do. In the past, they said site speed matters. They kind of didn't tell you how they measured it. They have been super explicit. So that blog post and the one that was in May of last year went in explicit detail. What are the metrics? It's these 3. What are the thresholds for these metrics that equals passing? And then how are they going to measure it? And so let me quickly walk you through those 3 things. So these are the 3 metrics, and without getting into too much detail, what they focused on is the way the site feels to a user, to a shopper. How fast does that site feel? So I actually give Google a lot of credit for focusing on the right metrics. If any of you guys have looked at speed, what you'll find is that there's 50 or so metrics that one could look at, and if you talk to 50 people, they might talk about 50 different metrics. If you went to go look at Google's tools, different tools within Google's kind of ecosystem will highlight some metrics versus others. And then it's not only the metrics, it's like, did you measure it on a certain device at a certain speed? And you can have wildly different numbers there, where someone's saying you guys have a fast site, someone else is saying you've got a horribly slow site. Some are saying, well, it's fast, but not if you go to load up your site in Brazil or India. And then you ask yourselves, well, I only have less than 1% of my traffic from those countries, so why should I care? Yet Google's tools will kind of highlight that. That's all changed. So what I'm going to outline for you guys is how they're measuring it. They're measuring it in a pretty good way, in a very sane way. So they've gotten a lot better about this. So these are the 3 metrics. The first one is called largest contentful paint. That's probably far and away the most important one. That's how quickly does your page appear to render and appear to paint? And largest contentful paint means what's the largest element on that page and when does that render? Now for an e-commerce page, like a product page, it's typically the big image of the product. When that thing loads is kind of when this triggers, and that's the time they're looking at. For a product listing page, it may be one of those products. On a home page, again, it could be an image, it could be something else, but it's usually the biggest image. Doesn't have to be, but it's usually the biggest image. And when that thing loads, it's kind of, folks are saying, hey, this LCP is triggered. You have to have a speed of 2.5 seconds to be passing. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean they test it once and it's 2.5 seconds? Is it when the crawler visits your site? No, they've been very explicit about this. What they've said is that it's, they also control obviously the Chrome browser. And many people in a Chrome browser, I think if you have the default settings, it basically says, are you willing to have, sites anonymously tracked in Chrome? And so what's going on is when real visitors visit your site and they're using the Chrome browser, either on mobile or on the desktop, they are actually reporting to Google the speed that they're actually experiencing as real users. It's called RUM, real user measurement. And if most of your users are in Europe, then most of these times are going to be from Europe. If most of your users are in the US, then most of these times are going to be from the US. And so they look at that, and then they create what's called a histogram. A histogram says, the median speed might be 1.5 seconds, but instead of looking at the median speed, they look at the 75th percentile, the 75th, like kind of slowest. So it's going to be a speed that's higher than your average speed. And they're going to say, for that bottom 25% of your users, the slowest 25%, the fastest among them is the 75th percentile. Well, what's the speed there? And if it's 2.5 seconds across all, an average across all your pages and across all your users, you get a passing score on LCP. So that's how, that's the methodology in general for these three metrics. And for LCP, that's how it's calculated. FID, again, it's a different metric, but really that's about, when a page loads, can you interact with the search bar? Can you interact with other things? What I'll say about FID is most of you guys pass. I think it's something like 85% or so of the e-commerce market has a passing score on this, and it may be even higher. It's actually 93% has a passing score. So there's very few of you that don't already have a passing score on this. Cumulative layout shift is really important. That is, if you've ever been on a site, especially those new sites with ads, where the site loads and you're about to interact with it, and then things bounce around on the page. Google has a term for that. They call it web page jank. I think it's a funny term for sure, but I like it. It's like when a web page loads, but then it kind of doesn't. Then you tap on something, and you clicked on the wrong link, you clicked on the ad, which almost sometimes seems like it's being done on purpose. It's when something loads, but then it hops around after it loads. Cumulative layout shift is something, again, you want all these numbers, you want to be them to be as low as possible. And so for FID, 100 milliseconds is kind of the target you're going for at the 75th percentile. And for CLS, it's this metric, and you want a score of 0.1 or lower. And so that's what you're shooting for. Now, if you pass all three, then you're passing Core Web Vitals. And if you pass Core Web Vitals, you're going to get some badge of honor on your search result link. Maybe it's a lightning bolt, maybe it's something else. And so when a site passes Core Web Vitals, you are able to, what Google has said is that users are 24% less likely to abandon page loads. So this is not only going to improve your SEO, because Google in May is going to rank your site higher, and maybe even make your click-throughs higher because of that badge of honor. It's also just independently going to drive higher conversions, because people who are on faster sites tend to convert at higher rates. And Google's studied all the metrics of the 50 extensively, and these are the three that genuinely correlate to less abandonment and higher conversion rates. So it's definitely something you should focus on. I know there was a question there. It's definitely not something that only a few people are focused on, and therefore we can kind of all ignore it. I will say the leaders in sort of conversion rates and website optimization, when the announcement went out in May, they started talking about what do we need to do about it. Now, the good news, if you go to the next slide, is that as soon as you know, as recently as a few weeks ago, we went there and looked at, and we crawled the 6,500 e-commerce sites, and we looked at these scores and looked at the databases for these scores for 6,500 e-commerce sites. Only 13% of e-commerce sites pass Core Web Vitals, meaning they get a passing score on all three. So that's actually a, you know, that's really important. And so what are people doing in response to that? We'll get into that in more detail. I think I'll share one thing is that just the idea of making a headless website. If you look at headless websites, you can see, you know, if you look at these speeds here, they're above 2.5 seconds. Largest contentful paint needs to be under 2.5 seconds to get a passing score. So the average sort of internet retailer 500 website is not passing. It's at 3.5 seconds. Those that are headless are actually even slower. So just going headless, which is this term where people launch a single page application, or a headless, what they call a progressive web application, or they use React or Angular or Vue or one of these frameworks to write their website. That doesn't actually make your site faster, even though that's one of the promises of those frameworks. A little plug for MoveWeb: if you use MoveWeb and launch one of these headless sites, you're definitely getting a passing score. You get an amazingly fast website. It's even faster than this, because once you start browsing around the website, it's nearly instant. But that's just one thing to point out. If you go to the next slide, what I wanted to share here is this data. So of these 6,500 websites, only 13% get a passing score on all three. But let's look at these different, of those three metrics, you know, where you really want to focus on is LCP and CLS, because that's probably where you're not passing. On FID, you probably are already passing, so you don't really have to worry about that one. On the other two, on cumulative layout, it's actually not too hard to fix. It's a set of changes you make to your CSS files to ensure that things don't bounce around on the page, and some other things. So please do contact MoveWeb, either at go@moveweb.com or email me personally, Ajay, AJAY, @moveweb.com. We can tell you all the things you need to do on your website there. We do that free of charge. It's not like, that's not what we sell. We don't sell consulting services. We sell a product. That product really helps you with that LCP score, that first one. That one's not easy to fix. That's not easy to get to 2.5 seconds or better for 75% of your visitors across all your pages. That tends to be pretty difficult. And we can make that very easy to do with our platform. And obviously, if you're
really quick, you're providing, so just at a couple, so do you provide like an audit service where you come in and just take a look at these and say, hey, actually you're great, you don't have to do anything, or hey, these are the two things that you have to fix?
Yeah, we essentially do that. And so if there's a genuine fit with our product, we audit, you know, we give you that audit service for free. If it's more like, you know, maybe there's not a fit there, you're not interested, or it's, you know, for whatever reason, we have a sister company and a firm called MoveForge that I think at pretty low cost can do an audit. So we'll try to get you into a free audit, if and when possible. We'll at a minimum do that and point you to relevant materials that you can do and kind of do a self audit. And again, and we'll really aim to make it something that's free. And in the kind of edge cases there, if that's not possible, we'll point you to someone that can do it at low cost.
Awesome, love it.
Yeah.
And just had some more people join. So at any point in time, if you have questions, drop them into the questions, the question section there. Yeah, so we'll get as many answered as possible. So
yeah, now you're probably asking right now, how do I stand on this metric? I'm going to send you to a URL right now, and I don't know how I'm able to.
just tell it to me and I'll drop it in the chat.
Okay, I'll tell it to you. So www.moveweb.com/e-commerce-core-web-vitals. E-commerce core web vitals. E-commerce-core-web-vitals. So www.moveweb.com/e-commerce/e-commerce-core-web-vitals. So you guys should go there. It's pulling data from Google's databases. It makes it really easy to test your competitors and see how they're doing. Note that a lot of people are just kind of in the midst of trying to fix things right now. And it's really fast, you know, to do searches really fast. If you try to use Google's tools, it takes forever. They give you way too many metrics. They don't just give you the answer, do I pass or not? They give you, you know, a mountain of other information. This makes it really easy to look at yourselves and competitors. Um, so, uh,
So really
so that,
quick, yeah, I'm gonna jump into it, just a couple questions that are starting to come in because I think they're cool. The first one, if we go to Google's CWV's frequently asked questions specifies, at this time, using page experience as a signal for ranking will apply only to mobile search. The question is, do you recommend optimizing for mobile web as the priority for the May 2021 search algo change?
yeah, we look, in general, many people are on the mobile first. I think almost everyone is on the mobile first sort of ranking, and so um, by speeding, most people have responsive sites. By speeding up your mobile site and attempting to meet these metrics for the mobile browser, you will implicitly pass on desktop. So mobile's just the harder one to get to achieve these metrics. These passing scores here are all based on mobile metrics, and that's really how they're kind of making it primarily about mobile. And so focus on mobile, and the desktop will kind of happen automatically and by default. It's very hard to pass mobile and not pass desktop. Well, it's easy to go the other way. You could optimize desktop and not pass mobile. So focus on mobile. Great question.
Awesome. Love it. Next one, does MoveWeb's tool improving LCP work on WordPress sites, or do you have any specific plugins or tips to improve web vitals for WordPress sites?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have an offering called XDN Starter. So our product is called the Experience Delivery Network. It works with all sorts of sites. The beauty, a lot of people who are on WordPress sites tend to not be super high traffic. Obviously, if you are, that's great. The beauty of that is we have a really generous free tier, and that free tier tends to be pretty good for sites doing, $1 million in revenue or less or so. That's not how we price it. We price it based on bandwidth and other things. I'm just giving a rough sense. So go to moveweb.com and look at the pricing page. Go to developer.moveweb.com, and you'll see, the flagship product is meant for these headless websites like Next.js and Nuxt.js and React and Angular. But you'll see at the bottom it says don't have one of these frameworks, XDN Starter. So go to developer.moveweb.com and then click on XDN Starter, and then you'll see this kind of methodology for setting up on any other site, including WordPress sites. So it's great. You'll be able to go and significantly improve your LCP. Send us an email and we'll tell you how to pass CLS. You're probably already passing FID, and you should be good to go. I mean, you got plenty of time until May. That's the good news here. If you're using a product like ours, you got plenty of time. If you tried to manually use all the tips that Google feeds you to speed up LCP, it may take some time. You may burn a lot of hours and not get there. So great questions. Keep them coming.
Yeah, let's keep tackling a couple more.
Yeah.
What are some of the most common issues you see with Shopify sites? And then we have a question about, what about not commerce?
Yeah, great. So on not commerce, I'll quickly answer. This applies to all sites.
Okay.
Obviously with this audience here and MoveWeb, and where we have a lot of customers, we're kind of focused on the commerce aspect of this, but this applies to all sites. So definitely focus on it. Look at, so the URL I shared with you earlier doesn't have non-commerce sites, but you can go to Google's tools. If you go to the next slide. So Google's tools are now starting to integrate the Core Web Vitals in there. And so for those that are not in commerce, definitely go to this what's called Page Speed Insights. We should have put the URLs in here. We didn't. Just Google Page Speed Insights. You'll be able to go there, put your URL in, see how you stand. Now, this is where it just gets so confusing with using Google's tools. When you get these results here, you'll see all sorts of stuff. You'll see a score of 99. You see some score. You probably won't be at 99. And then you see all this other stuff. Okay, focus on where it says origin summary. And then if you see the little blue ribbons down there, largest contentful paint, first input delay, cumulative layout shift, those are the 3 metrics you want to focus on. And then you want to make sure that the green bar is at 75% or higher for all 3. That equals passing. So I don't know why Google's tool doesn't just tell you the answer and why you have to hunt for this. The origin summary doesn't even show up by default. You hit that check mark over there. So it is, that's why for e-commerce sites we created this simple way to get an instant result and just know where you stand. But that's what you do there if you're a non-e-commerce site, or you go to your Google Search Console, and that is useful. You're going to go in there and you're going to find which are the URLs that are good, which are the URLs that need improvement, which are the ones that are poor. You're going to need to have 75% of your URLs be in the good category to be passing. And so that's the other. You can kind of drill down into URLs. It's not, again, not a great tool. The MoveWeb XDN is about to release a incredible tool for diagnosing the problem on a URL basis, on a groupings of URL basis, product pages versus PLP versus home, for example. So it's kind of the tool you need to really dig in and fix the problem. So that's something that's going. We have a bunch of monitoring tools that help you today, and then we're adding all this Core Web Vitals stuff in the next few weeks. So and that may be available for free if your traffic is at the right threshold. So you should definitely check that out. What other questions were there? I'm happy to answer them. I have just a couple more slides, but I want to see if there's any good questions as I.
Yeah, the other one was, maybe we just say, what are some of the most common issues you see with Shopify sites?
Oh yeah. Shopify is a challenge here. So LCP can be pretty slow on Shopify sites because the APIs are not so fast, as you probably noticed when you try to use them. So your front end is often, dependent on those APIs. The second issue is that the ability to cache the HTML on your Shopify site is quite limited. So even if you have 1,000 visitors visiting your homepage, in the next hour, in the next 5 minutes, in the next minute, in the next 10 seconds, it just depends how much traffic you get. Shopify is not great about having that page cached near to those users in the city they're in. Let's say, for example, you've got 1,000 people in Manhattan who are going to hit your homepage in the next hour. Often platforms work well with CDNs and ensure that there's one person in that hour that is a cache miss that takes gets that HTML served slowly, and the next 999 are getting it from that cached version living in Manhattan for the next hour. It's not very good at that. So LCP will be a challenge there. And the great news is, a lot of customers of the MoveWeb XDN use Shopify, and it's just not a problem. They have a sub-second website that is not only passing, but it's just significantly faster than any competitors there. What we don't know is that if two sites pass, but one is much faster than another, one's at just barely passing at 2.5 seconds LCP, and another is like a MoveWeb customer at sub-second speeds, like 0.8 seconds LCP. Is that A+ grade make you rank higher, all other things being equal? We don't know. It's tough to tell. I can tell you today it makes a difference. Prior to the algorithm change, there's a slight impact that they're having around speed, and we can tell something there. But when it comes to what they're doing, we don't really know whether it's just about the binary idea of passing, or whether how, even once you pass, is it even better? We don't, we don't know whether the converse is true either. If you're, barely passing, is that better than someone who is really, really slow? We don't know. My guess is with their algorithm, it's all kind of a score, and being as fast as possible is better than just barely passing, and being fast but not passing is better than being really, really slow. But we don't really know. We will be the first to measure it. Once the algorithm takes effect, we have so many customers and can measure these effects. So we'll be the first ones to measure it and blog about it when they do take it live. We also do talk to Google a lot. They are unwilling to share too much, not in writing, but they have been sharing some stuff with us. So, if we're able to share information there, we will as well. So Shopify, is more challenging than most when it comes to speed in general, but LCP in particular, which is the hardest thing to fix. CLS, FID we can ignore. Most sites will pass it. CLS, it's kind of independent of your ecom platform. LCP is quite independent to the whole stack, the edge of the network, the API speed, just the whole deal. Even your front end CSS and JavaScript, especially, like all those things factor into LCP. CLS is pretty much dependent on your layout code, your CSS on your website. So the CSS on a website, two customers on, say, Magento, two customers on Shopify, like you could have very different CSS, and one may be very good about not shifting the layout, and one may be very bad. And so CLS is pretty easy to fix, and you just got to focus on the techniques required to not have stuff bounce around your page, and we'll point you to the right content on that, or do an audit for you on that. So don't worry too much about CLS. Focus your energy on LCP, and you'll be in good shape.
Awesome. Love it. Love it. So just a reminder, you can keep dropping questions in at some people join the halfway mark. We'll get as many answered as possible. Yeah, we can jump back. You said there's a couple more slides.
Yeah, go to the next slide. So I want to show you some case studies. So look, the MoveWeb XDN powers the fastest sites on the planet. So look, we were in this business of speed before the announcement on, of Core Web Vitals. And so speed is valuable well beyond the need to impress Google and show up higher in search results. Speed drives revenue. And so these wins that you're seeing here are pretty much independent and in addition to the wins that you'll get from the search engine changes. So Kate Spade is part of the Tapestry brands that includes Coach and Stuart Weitzman. They are a customer of MoveWeb and will be a customer across all brands. And they're just in their various kind of modes of deployment. But on Kate Spade, they did their deployment. They got their LCP. The median LCP, they got it down to 450 milliseconds. What is that? That's about half a second. 500 milliseconds is half a second. So way better than, I'm not sure what the 75th percentile was, but 75th percentile was also very fast. But it was a 4x reduction in LCP, and they saw a 12% increase to revenue per user. And so it's a, it's a really impressive result for them. Shoe Carnival did even better. They had a 12x reduction in LCP, so obviously they were going to have a bigger impact. They saw a 40% revenue lift on mobile web. They're in the midst of deploying this type of headless experience responsively that runs on the MoveWeb XDN, and so they'll see even more wins when the desktop, website sees some of these wins as well. Kate Spade was responsive from the get-go. Shoe Carnival decided to go mobile web first. Revolve saw a 4x reduction as well. And a 7% conversion rate increase. And then some companies out there are not focused so much on revenue and other things. They're really focused on this different metrics like the Lighthouse score, which I'm sure some of you have heard of. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Lighthouse score. The Lighthouse score is not a Core Web Vital. The Lighthouse score could be 1 or 99 or 100, and it's not going to directly impact your speed. The Core Web Vitals are the only thing that are going to directly impact your speed. You can read the blog post from Google, and they're very explicit about how they're going to rank your site. Now, of course, if you have better Core Web Vitals, those somehow feed in this kind of formula into the Lighthouse score. So better Lighthouse scores are correlated with better Core Web Vitals. But there are some red herrings in there. There's some things that you could really do to optimize your Lighthouse score that have nothing to do with Core Web Vitals. Focus on the Core Web Vitals. Now, some companies out there, because it's a number and it's a score, and many of you guys were A students in high school, and so you wanted to just make sure you get an A score here, and it's not very satisfying. The average e-commerce site gets a 26 out of 100 as a Lighthouse score. We have some blog posts about it. You can read in detail the Lighthouse scores by e-com platform. I think you'll see Shopify is kind of lower on that. And you'll see that in our moveweb.com/blog, I believe. No, it's not. Just search for MoveWeb and blog in Google and you'll find it. And but some companies are really focused on it. They want to get that A grade. They want to get that score. It's very hard to get a 99 or 100. It's very hard to get above an 80. There's very few sites in the Internet Retailer 500. There's 1 or 2 that get above 80. But some companies like Guide to Iceland, it's the biggest e-commerce site and the biggest e-commerce site in Iceland, was very focused on it, and they were able to get a 99 by employing the MoveWeb XDN platform. They also employed this team from the sister company MoveForge that actually can get you to really focus on CLS FID as well, as kind of a team that'll come in, do an audit, maybe even tweak your CSS for you. So we're happy to introduce you to that team if you kind of want someone to just kind of handle it for you. So they were really focused on that. They got a 99 there. They're it's just off the charts in terms of any other e-commerce site. About the platform, just briefly, if you go to the next slide, what is it? So it's infrastructure for large-scale e-commerce sites, and it will work with your site regardless of what state you're in, regardless of what e-commerce platform you're on. And so there are kind of 2 flavors of the offering. For those of you that are headless, which is about 15% of the market, you're using Next, React, Nuxt, Angular, SAP Spartacus, Magento, what do they call it? Studio, PWA Studio. If you're using one of those frameworks, then you're headless. If you're headless, you use our full offering. There we guarantee sub-second speeds pretty much. It's pretty easy to have your agency or your own internal development team get a sub-second speed. And so, that team can easily guarantee those results just because there's so many case studies of how to do that. For the other 85% of you that are not headless, we have an offering called Starter. And Starter will work with the site you have. It can complement your CDN, it can replace your CDN, but it will make your LCP a lot faster, which is great. And effectively what it does is it brings the content into the browser from the edge of the network 5 seconds before the tap. So there's no optimization better than that. You can go read Google suggestions on your website and it'll give you the long list of image optimization, non-blocking CSS. I mean, it's all this kind of stuff that some of which is easy to implement, some of which is really hard. At the end of the day, nothing beats the idea that the content was streamed into the browser 5 seconds before the tap, before the shopper even tapped on it. And that's the kind of magic of the XDN when it comes to site speed. And we make it dead simple to enable this for one of your websites. So for a starter, website we call on the starter, one of the 85% that are non-headless, you can go in there and have a team configure your website as soon as, if it's a savvy team, it'll take a couple days. And if it's a team that needs a little more advice and help from our solutions architects, then it may take a few weeks. But you can solve that LCP problem pretty quickly. The CLS one will be more of an audit style thing, which you can use us for, where we'll tell you what to fix. That's usually pretty easy to fix. So, don't be alarmed. You're probably in that 87% that's not passing, just based on the numbers there. But don't be alarmed. You can fix the problem, and definitely reach out to us, ajay@moveweb.com or go@moveweb.com. Just email us there, and we'll help you there. Last thing is you can just see case study here. I think I already alluded to these guys. If you go to the next slide, Guide to Iceland, saw some really incredible wins across both Lighthouse Score and Core Web Vitals. And you can see their Lighthouse Score went from 40 to 99. Their largest contentful paint went from a not passing 5.4 seconds to a more than passing 1.6 seconds. First input delay is great there at under 100, well under 100 milliseconds. So that went from not passing to passing, and cumulative layout shift it did really well for them as well. Again, all of those are passing, and you can see that in the left there. So again, reach out to us on any of these topics, even if you have no intent to buy. We love to learn from the questions people have, and I can just devote the rest of the time here to any and all questions you guys might have.
Yeah, awesome. So yeah, thanks so much. And so just a reminder for people who have jumped on, feel free to drop questions in there. The next one that comes in, dynamic ads seem to have a big impact on CLS. Any techniques you can speak to here?
Yeah, so on dynamic ads, on LCP, one way to make sure that it doesn't impact your, there's a few things on dynamic ads. Number one, make sure the height of the container containing the ad is in your CSS. And that's going to prevent the dynamic ad from shifting content and then causing you to not pass CLS. CLS is cumulative layout shift to those who are joined more recently. And so what Google is trying to do is make sure that when they actually, ads are the biggest culprit there, where you have an ad load after the fact and everything shifts. So how do you fix that in your CSS if you know that banner or whatever it is 100 pixels tall? First off, all that matters is what's in the viewport when the page loads. So if these banners are off the screen on a mobile phone below the fold, you don't have to worry about them too much. But above the fold stuff, you do have to worry about. And so let's say it's 100 pixels or 200 pixels. Make sure that your CSS knows that beforehand. It's kind of coded into your CSS so that it doesn't just show up and shift your page. If your CSS is already saying it's 200 pixels before it loads, it'll create a white spot. And then that white spot will get filled with the ad and nothing will shift. And you won't run afoul of cumulative layout shift. You won't create layout shift there. So that's tech tip number one there. If this is sort of getting too much in the weeds for you guys, have your agency email us, and we'll we'll walk them through and point them to content on that. The other thing on dynamic ads, though, that's important, largest contentful paint. So largest contentful paint means the largest element on the page. Now, if the largest element on your page is an ad, you probably shouldn't have that. So the beauty of it is that most people's largest thing is not an ad. Now it can depend. Like if you're a publisher and it's an article, the ad may actually be the biggest thing because your title is smaller than your ad. So, a little hack there is just maybe try to make it such that something else other than the ad is the largest thing, largest div or element on the page. Obviously for e-commerce, it's pretty easy because usually the largest thing is an image and the use of a banner and banner ads is more limited. So for e-commerce, it's less of an issue. So I suspect the question may have come from a publisher. Try to see if there's some other element that can be bigger than the ad that's there. If that's not possible, then you're going to need to work with that provider to make sure that thing loads as fast as possible to get a good LCP. Make sure they're caching the images, make sure they're doing that sort of thing.
Awesome. So next question, the biggest issue we and a lot of other sites have is marketing tracking and tracking, tags, loading as a whole. How do you control for that?
Yeah, that's a great one. So let me give a few answers there without making this too complicated. Let me answer it from the e-commerce perspective. Typically speaking, all that JavaScript, those tracking tags adds to a page tends to hurt FID more than other things. And the beauty is most companies pass FID. So the initial answer might be, and again, we can do an audit and look at this. The initial answer might be that all that activity they're doing isn't actually causing you to fail Core Web Vitals because it's hurting you on FID a little bit, and the thresholds for FID are higher enough such that it's not a problem there. But that's not the full story. Those marketing and those tags can impact LCP for sure, and sometimes CLS as well. Not as often, but it can certainly impact LCP. So there are tried and true techniques to late load scripts and do certain things like that. Where you put the tag manager matters. When possible, you try to do it more at the end of the page and other things like that. Late loading some of those trackers that really aren't critical right away. I mean, you should focus all energy on that web page to load the page. So it sounds like the question is coming from more of someone on the IT side. And the beauty is that you do have control over when that container, that script container loads. And some companies have taken the idea to delay that. Now that creates other trade-offs. So definitely that's something that we can do an audit for you on, because that gets a little more subtle. It's hard to know without looking at your website, but we can do an audit there and and offer some recommendations. There's some other paths there as well when it comes to third-party scripts. We can do an audit. That's one path there. Obviously, our product is going to get the content in there, even if your marketing team is doing a bunch of things. If the content's already there and sitting in the browser before the tap, then you may have a passing LCP in spite of all the stuff the marketing team is doing. And then there's a company called Yada, and they're pretty good about that one problem of marketing scripts, to help solve that problem if if that tends to be your problem. So those are some recommendations I can offer. You can ping us if you want more detail. And yeah, that's how I'd answer that one. I'll give you one other thing. When it comes to the activity of the marketing team, what can really kill you on LCP is A/B testing, especially what are called client-side A/B testing tools, which is most A/B testing tools. That's when the marketing team is going in there and there's an image that shows up, and maybe it's your largest image, and then they swap it out through JavaScript in the browser. They have this nice interface that makes it really easy for them to A/B test images. The problem is it's sort of like it shows an image and then it swaps it out. It's that screen flicker thing that happens. That is essentially toxic when it comes to LCP. So you want them to use the server-side integrations to change those things, not the client-side integrations. And again, the MoveWeb XDN makes it possible to have your cake and eat it too, and get A/B testing, and allow that marketing team to do all the A/B testing they want, and have a very fast website with a passing LCP and these other metrics.
Awesome. Next question. Well, we'll get to this one. Will we get a copy of this presentation? Are we cool to connect you and have you send this out, Jay?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll send it to you. Leo, let's make sure our contact info is in it before we send it out. And also the links that I've been sharing, let's make sure that's in the deck, and then we'll send it out to you guys.
Perfect. In your experience, how much do landing page software programs hurt or help website speed, if at all?
So I'd probably take this to mean the Unbounce of the world and the HubSpot landing pages and that sort of thing, things that marketing teams use. They tend to hurt. Look, there's a trade-off here. And what's that trade-off? The ease of creating content, the WYSIWYGs, the ability to have tag managers, and the things that empower marketing teams are at some level at odds with site speed, and we all know that. You kind of have this trade-off. Do I want to easily deliver a page, or do I want to make it kind of load quickly? So in general, the short answer is that yes, there's a trade-off. Now, what can you do about that? Many of these tools have the ability to, well, number one, it's hard not to pitch our product because it's so good, it's so useful for this problem, but sticking MoveWeb in front of those pages will definitely help, even while giving those teams that flexibility. Improving those cache hit rates, and if it's multiple pages and they're browsing around, the ability to have the data for the next page already there when they tap around, that's certainly going to help. So that's one plug. But without that plug, I would say you can still go into these front ends and optimize the CSS and do these other things the way you normally would. And then the marketing team would have to use those components. Some platforms support that, others don't. When it comes to a CMS that sort of natively has focused on this, I don't have a great answer there. I can say that Webflow, which I know not many of you use, is a really great product which gives you landing pages, and you can build full websites on it. It's kind of like a competitor to WordPress. They have focused on site speed, and you can get some pretty fast, some pretty fast sites there. Now they feel really fast, but sometimes won't pass all these metrics. So I can't say that you just use Webflow and you're going to pass all this stuff. But it's a challenging problem, I'll say that. And there is this trade-off between the flexibility you give these teams. If you're not using a product like MoveWeb, there's this trade-off between the speed and agility of teams and site speed. And I'm sure you guys have all experienced that.
Awesome. Next question that comes in: Does SharePoint/Drupal work well with XDN Starter? My SharePoint site is different mini tools. Those are built on different JavaScript libraries. Will there be any issue in this case?
Yeah, it'll work. So there is no, so XDN Starter is like a content delivery network, i.e. it works with any site. It works with any website. So the answer is yes. And there's just a very simple, a much simpler way to config how you get high cache hit rates and prefetching, which is that 5-second ahead thing I've been talking about, than would be the case on any conventional CDN, Cloudflare, CloudFront, Akamai, Fastly, you name it. So that's the answer is yes there. It'll work with any website that you have there. And again, if the site's not super high traffic, you may fall in the free tier. So you definitely should check it out. MoveWeb.com or developer.moveweb.com if you're on the IT side.
Awesome. No, love it. And thanks for all the great questions. The next one that comes in: does lazy load make a huge difference?
It does, yeah. So it can. I'll say that. First off, I want to thank everyone for these questions. I love, I do a lot of these things, and different audiences are more or less engaged, and it's just great to see all the detailed questions here. So lazy loading is super important. So think about this. These scores, like LCP, are only focused, and LCP and CLS are only focused on what happens above the fold. And so now imagine that your biggest image, which is above the fold, the one that LCP is measuring, is delayed because you're downloading 10 images below the fold that's not even going to be measured by LCP. Definitely late load those things. Always prioritize the loading of stuff that's above the fold and the loading of JavaScript and CSS that was required to render the stuff that's above the fold, and the loading of API data and HTML that's required to render the above the fold content. always prioritize that, and then lazy load everything else. If you can lazy load your analytics, lazy load that as well. So if you lazy load everything, you'll make huge strides toward LCP and even CLS as well.
Awesome. Awesome. Love it. Are there, I see we've probably got about 2 minutes left here. Are there things that pop up that you thought we might get to today that we just didn't get a chance to just because of time? I mean, awesome questions. I love the engagement. Thanks to everybody for shooting those over. Are there things that you thought we might get to that we didn't, or that commonly come up? And the other question that I want to ask is, implementing something like MoveWeb, how long does it take? Because I know that that's going to be something on top of people's minds. Like, does it?
Yeah. Look, we covered a lot here. So the starter offering, if you're in that 85% of the market that's not yet headless, the starter offering is some configuration that's as fast as like a day. If it's an engineer and a developer that's sort of just familiar with CDN-like stuff, and it can be as slow as like 3 weeks if you have to make some changes to your web pages to make content cacheable. And our solutions engineering team can really help with that, because we know all the patterns on Shopify and other things that tend to make pages uncacheable, and we can tell you exactly what to fix. So between a day and 3 weeks, I know that's a big range for starter. And for full, the beauty is if you're already headless, you're using SAP Spartacus or React or Vue or one of these things, Nuxt or Next, you could go live. You could go do a deploy in 10 minutes. You can have your site running, and you can just set up domains and everything in a few hours, and you could go live tomorrow. If you want to do heavy rounds of QA and other things, depending, you may want to devote a sprint to it, and it takes you a couple weeks. But that's, if you're already headless, you can deploy, and not only are you going to get a faster site, your web developer is going to thank you. I mean, it's just a joy to use this platform. A/B tests run fast. Every time you push code, you get a fully baked environment that allows you to discover bugs faster. So the number one benefit of the full version of our XDN are these sub-second website speeds. And the number two benefit is that you kind of get a day per week of an additional developer team velocity because of all these features around split testing and around local development, things that just accelerate the velocity of your team. They just do more in a given week, about a day extra. So yeah, thank you for asking that. There's nothing really else here, but I will just share that we are really interested in talking to anyone and everyone who attended here, those that asked questions, those that didn't, and we'll send you the deck. We'll have our contact info in there, and I'm Ajay at moveweb.com, AJAY, if you want to reach out to me directly. Looking forward to all the conversations we have, and good luck with everything that's here. If you choose not to reach out to us, we wish you well. And if you just want resources on all these topics, read our blog. There's a lot there.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Ajay, and thanks to everybody who dialed in today. Once again, I encourage anybody to have a follow-up conversation with them and their team. They're great friends, supporters of the network, been recommended by multiple brands within it as a whole. So 100% worth your time. At least pick their brains on other things that they have going on. They're all resident experts in the digital space as a whole. Also, if anybody just wants to have a conversation on digital strategy, don't look for a follow-up email from us. More than happy to jump on a call. Love connecting and networking and knowledge sharing as a whole.